February 1959. The northern Ural Mountains. A place where the wind doesn't just blow, it screams. 9 hikers, bright, talented, and experienced, set out on a trek that should have been the highlight of their youth. They were members of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They knew how to survive. They knew how to handle the cold. They were supposed to return by mid-February. They never did. When the search parties finally breached the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, they weren't looking at a group of lost travelers. They were looking at a crime scene that defied every law of physics and human survival. Today, we delve into the deep layers of the Dyatlov Pass incident, a story stripped of rumors, focusing only on the cold, hard, and terrifying facts. To understand the tragedy, we must understand the people. Igor Dyatlov, the leader, was a seasoned mountaineer. He wasn't reckless. With him were Zenaida Kolmogorova, Ludmila Dubanina, Alexander Kolevatov, Rustem Slobodin, Yuri Krivonishenko, Yuri Doroshenko, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov. They weren't just wandering, they were on a Category 3 expedition, the highest difficulty level at the time. They carried cameras, journals, and logs. They documented their journey meticulously. On January 27th, they reached the Vizhai village, the last point of civilization. From there, they moved toward the northern Urals. They were heading to Otorten Mountain. Everything was documented. Up until the very last moment, there was no sign of trouble. On the afternoon of February 1st, 1959, the group decided to set up camp. They were behind schedule due to bad weather and difficult terrain. Instead of pushing forward to the wooded area, they stopped on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. This is where the debate begins. Why would an experienced group set up camp on an exposed, wind-swept slope? Geographers point out that the slope was not the dead mountain peak itself, but a relatively flat section. They pitched their tent. They had dinner. They were preparing for the night. Their journals stop here. But the story was just beginning. 25 days later, the search party arrived. What they found remains the most famous image of the mystery. The tent was still standing, but it was partially collapsed and covered in snow. When the investigators cut open the fabric, they found something shocking. The tent was sliced from the inside. It wasn't an external attack, it was an emergency exit. They didn't pack their bags. They didn't put on their boots. They cut their way out and ran. Why? What could scare a group of 9 experienced, armed, and trained hikers into abandoning their only protection against minus 30 degrees Celsius weather? The searchers tracked the footprints. This is where the logic fails. There were no signs of a struggle. There were no signs of intruders. There were no footprints other than those of the hikers. The tracks led down the mountain toward the tree line. Some were made in boots, some in socks, some barefoot. The pace was steady. They weren't sprinting in panic at first. They were walking. It's as if they were moving away from something they couldn't see, or perhaps something they were trying to avoid being seen by. Then, at the edge of the forest, the tracks simply stopped. At the edge of the woods, near a large pine tree, the searchers found the bodies of Doroshenko and Krivonishenko. They were under a tree that had been stripped of its branches. They were in their underwear. Nearby were the remnants of a fire. It was small. The branches showed signs of being broken, not cut. This indicates they had tried to keep the fire going to survive, but they had failed. They had frozen to death. But why were they partially undressed? Why was the tree branch broken at such a high point? Searching between the tent and the forest, rescuers found Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin. They were found at intervals, as if they were trying to crawl back to the tent. Slobodin's skull showed a fracture, but it was not the cause of death. He had died of hypothermia. They were trying to return to the life they had left behind in the tent, but they couldn't make it. The cold had already set in. 2 months passed before the remaining 4 were found. They were buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine deeper in the forest. This discovery shattered the simple hypothermia theory. Thibaut Brignol and Zolotaryov had massive chest injuries, fractures so severe they looked like the result of a car crash. Dubinina and Kolovatov had internal damage that medical examiners couldn't explain. And then, the most bizarre detail. Dubinina's tongue was missing. Her eyes were gone. Where did they go? Were they scavenged by animals? Or is there something else? Over the decades, dozens of theories have been presented. The avalanche. The official Russian investigation in 2020 concluded that a slab avalanche forced them out. However, critics argue that the tent would have been crushed, not just sliced. Also, there were no physical signs of a major slide on the terrain. Infrasound. Some suggest the wind hitting the mountain created a frequency that causes human beings to experience extreme panic, hallucinations, and even physical distress. The military test. During the Cold War, the Soviets were testing everything. Some claim they stumbled upon a missile test or a parachute-dropped weapon. The traces of radioactivity found on some clothes are often cited as proof of this. Let's look at the facts again. The radiation was only found on 2 of the items, which could be explained by professional background. Krivonishenko worked at the Mayak nuclear facility. The missing tongue and eyes? Forensic experts have noted that soft tissues like the tongue and eyes are the first to be eaten by scavengers in cold conditions. This is a scientific fact, not a supernatural occurrence. However, this doesn't explain the panic. The most logical conclusion is that they experienced a catastrophic event that threatened their lives in the tent. A slab avalanche, even a small one, is enough to terrify anyone in the middle of the night. If they believed the entire mountain was coming down on them, the decision to flee is no longer irrational. It is a survival instinct. We have the maps, the autopsy reports, the photos, and the logs. We know how they died: hypothermia, trauma, exposure. But we still don't know why. Did they see a light in the sky? Was it a natural event? Was it human error? The beauty of the Dyatlov Pass case is that it doesn't give us an answer. It gives us questions. It reminds us that there are still places on this earth where nature is the master, and we are merely guests who sometimes pay the ultimate price. The hikers of the Dyatlov expedition were looking for an adventure. They found something else entirely. Their names are etched in history, not because of how they lived, but because of the mystery they left behind. As the sun sets over the Ural Mountains, the silence remains. The mountain doesn't speak, it only waits. And for those of us watching from the outside, the case of the Dyatlov Pass will remain an open chapter, a testament to the unknown, and a reminder that some secrets are buried so deep that even time cannot reach them.